welcome to the 40K Fireside podcast, where we discuss everything to do with competitive Warhammer 40K with your hosts Vik VJ and David Gaylord. Hello everyone, welcome back to 40K Fireside. This is your host Vik with you here today, and it has been a little bit since I made a video. It's been 2 weeks while I've been away on holiday, but I'm back now, and what a glorious period of time I've come back to for the Aeldari players. We are in a very nice stretch of balance for Aeldari at the moment, in my opinion. I think we came out of the gates at the start of 10th edition way too strong. The codex has now taken, a series of nerfs. Yari has taken a big hit as well. And we're now in a position which I think is one of the best positions for Eldar to be in, which is where we're not so strong that we're going to be a constant talk for further nerfs. I think we're pretty safe in terms of that, and at the same time, we're not too weak that we can't compete. But I think we are weak enough at the moment that people maybe won't be thinking about Eldar so much when it comes to designing their list. They'll be thinking about Death Guard, Knights. Really, you aren't going to be teching for squishy T3 infantry in this meta, which leaves us in a very nice position as Aeldari players where we can innovate, look at the entire codex, and try and work out what's strong in competitive play. And honestly, the more time I spend with this codex trying to find out ways to survive and play in this meta, especially at the higher kind of levels of competitive play, the more exciting I think it really is. There's a lot of fun, innovative stuff that we can do in the codex, and there are ways of truly winning even against the very best armies in the meta. Just a little update in terms of what we're doing with Fireside. Dave's obviously been making lots of masterclasses on 40kfireside.com if you guys want to check that out. Those are kind of between 4 to 6 hours each, and each one is hosted with specialists in the subject. Space Marines, you had Oliver Weiss, you had Innes, Chris Radford, loads of people coming on and just talking about different things to do with Space Marines. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check that out. In terms of what I've been doing on my end, on the Fireside Discord, we've started doing a thing where we get open coaching sessions. So they're completely included in the Discord level YouTube membership. Once you get onto the Discord, every week or 2 weeks, we have someone in who will be doing an hour to an hour and a half of coaching, answering questions from anyone who attends the live session, and then we record, put it on YouTube for the Discord level members to see. I did a coaching session yesterday, and obviously there were a lot of Aeldari questions. So if you are interested in that side of things, as well as getting involved with the Aeldari Discord, which in my opinion, I think is the best Aeldari Discord out there, make sure to join the YouTube membership, but join at the middle level, which gives you Discord access. You get quite a lot for doing that. Obviously, if you're at the base level, you still get all of the extra videos that we put out regularly as well. But the Discord level has a bunch of benefits on top of it. Let's get back onto the topic today. So today we're going to be going through each of the different detachments in the Aeldari Codex. Now that we've had some balance updates, we know exactly where everything's sitting. Now, I want to chat a little bit about Aeldari in general, but first I'm going to kind of just show you the format that we're going to be using. So this is the kind of tier list system that I used for the Aspect Warrior tier list, which you have to scroll back a little bit to see if you're interested and want more Aeldari stuff. And the way this is done is not necessarily that stuff in B tier is actually B tier in the game. It's more the relative effectiveness of each of the detachments against each other. So S tier are going to be our best detachments, in my opinion, for actually winning competitive games. And then A tier, B tier, C tier, F tier are progressively less effective at winning games. Where Eldar sit at the moment, I think there are two key ways that we can win games. There's a classical playstyle to Eldar, which has been there for years and years, which is where we're a very fast trading army. We can go skirmish in little places on the board using our speed to access them, kill little bits of the opponent's army, and then at the end of the game, we manage to eke out a small win. That's a very effective playstyle, which has been there since Eldar were almost first created. That playstyle still exists, But with the new mission format, there's a very interesting alternative playstyle, which, in my opinion, I think works a little bit better for Eldar, which is a more aggressive playstyle. I think if Eldar try to play 5 turns of the game at the moment, I think they struggle a little bit to get consistent wins. And, Eldar plays here, I'm hoping you guys agree with it because my experience has been if I play 5 turns of Warhammer, just skirmishing little bits here, a little bit of primary denial, there's a good chance that just on the last turn of the game, I'm just losing by a little bit randomly. Whereas I've had a lot more success when I've kind of played a very fast, very aggressive army that stages a little bit and then just goes all in and absolutely crushes a section of the opponent's army. They can't quite hit me back correctly if I play it correctly, and I managed to win the game in that way. So that's the playstyle I have in the back of my head as the consistent way to win in this current meta with challenger cards and the mission formats that we have in place versus the more skirmishing and trading type armies. But Eldar is fantastic. We have multiple viable detachments, and both styles can really work here, but that's going to help guide us in our discussion. Let's start off by going through to our first detachment here, which is going to be the Warhost detachment. The Warhost detachment is the index detachment, and super interesting because when the codex first came out, I actually poo-pooed this detachment a little bit. I thought, you know what? Why do you need this? Why do you need to get your big, chunky, overpriced Phoenix Lord, and Aspect Warrior units back into your transports or back behind a wall and use them for multiple turns? You actually lose all of your momentum if you do that, in my opinion, when the codex first came out. And the reason why I didn't like it then was the way the meta was set up in competitive play when the codex first dropped. The playstyle that really worked very well was trying to play in multiple areas of the board, picking away at the opponent and making sure you don't actually fall behind on any aspect of the game. So you don't fall behind on secondaries or primary. Yannari was uniquely good at this particular playstyle, where you constantly gained an advantage in every single type of engagement here because of the number of movement tricks, particularly lethal intent. So that overshone every other option we had, and Warhost's ability to reuse these powerful units multiple times just paled in comparison to the ability to play across the entirety of the board. Things have changed now. Yannari doesn't really exist in that format, and the game doesn't really reward you so much for that playstyle anymore. Challenger cards allow you to significantly catch up on a primary deficit or any deficit on points. And Eldar are very well positioned to take advantage of that. And I think Warhost stock has significantly improved. At the start of the video, I was chatting a little bit about aggressive and passive playstyles. I think Warhost is set up as one of the best detachments for an aggressive playstyle. The reason for that is that when you do your all-in turn with an Eldar army, the ability to move a little bit faster with a higher number of units is excellent. Warhost's detachment rule is you gain an extra battle focus token, and all your battle focus moves are an additional inch. Then, when you've done your all-in attack to space on the board, you have a number of squishy units which often only get used once. In Yannari, they would only get used once. But for example, 10 Fire Dragons in Fuegan have the ability to be reused because you have stratagems like Fire and Fade or Skyborn Sanctuary, which allow you to move, make a normal move, or get back into a transport respectively. And this detachment contains both of them. You then also have the ability to fall back, shoot, charge as a stratagem, which means that your opponent can't tag you to reduce your subsequent output after an all-in turn. I think this detachment is brilliant at its all-in turns because after your opponent engages with you, they're not properly able to do significant damage to stuff that's got back into transports or got back behind a wall, and your second stage of attack is still quite significant rather than falling off a cliff, which often happens with Eldar. So I think Warhost is a very good detachment. It also, and a big reason why I put it in S tier, is it also is very good at the slow progressive playstyle as well. For example, you have units like Corsairs, which are very cheap 60 points, OC2 units. If you advance those with the +1 movement, that's, going 10 inches with an advance, um, then you have the ability to fire and fade, and you can move another d6+1. That's actually a lot of movement for a good primary denial unit. So you can play multiple turns where you're kind of grinding your opponent down a little bit on score, where they're just feeling a little bit uncomfortable that maybe they can't make it to the end of the game. And that's not a playstyle I prefer at the moment, because if you imagine this, and if you're going first and you're playing a primary denial playstyle, and you've designed your list to do primary denial, your opponent can really just sit off you, because the ability to score 20 plus points on the last turn is a very real thing. So why would they engage with you when they could just be getting challenger cards and playing the game slowly? So I personally think the very aggressive playstyle is going to give more consistent results, and I think Warhost is one of the premium detachments for that particular playstyle. Now, they do have some weaknesses. Actually, the Eldar as a whole, I know people will look at it and be like, oh, Eldar's output is crazy. But actually, if you look at each individual unit, the output of the units is actually not that good if you look at it on an individual unit basis. You have to combine a lot of different synergy with stratagems, special rules, get +1 to wound, crit fives. Then you have to use a stratagem for sustained hits. And then you superpower this one unit that's attacking into somewhere. Our big strength is not our output. It's not our durability. It's purely our speed and our ability to engage multiple units into one area of the board and focus fire. This detachment is also very well positioned to then also move block another area of the board. I think Warhost plays the aggressive playstyle absolutely beautifully, and I've got it in the S tier of competitive detachments for our Aeldari codex. Um, I'd love to hear people's opinions about this stuff. This is so based on each individual's experiences. But just remember, when you are discussing it with me, I'm not really looking at it from a casual perspective. I'm not even looking at it from a 2-3-3-2 going at tournaments kind of perspective. I'm very much looking at it at the higher end of competitive play, which I think is a good balancing point to look at, because Aeldari players, we are uniquely, I'd say almost uniquely, extremely high skill players. There are other factions which are really high skill, but Eldar players love developing their skill, learning their tricks, and they really engage with higher levels of skill play. So I think if we go with that frame of mind, you're aiming to push into the 4-1s, the 5-0s, actually winning GTs and majors. Let's use that as our tier list ranking. So Warhost, while they may not do brilliantly in the mid tables, I think they will do very well in the top tables. Next one is an interesting one. This is a glorious detachment in the Fireside Discord. This is one that we've been chatting about loads, and Guardian Battlehost has actually started winning GTs and things now. I think this detachment is a little bit of a sleeper hit. I think it's a very, very strong detachment. Its actual detachment rule, getting +1 to hit for your kind of guardian stuff, your war walkers, when you're on an objective or your opponent's on an objective, is a very flexible, really nice detachment rule. You also have pretty decent enhancements. You've got a good Overwatch enhancement, and you've got a good enhancement to infiltrate some Guardian units. I think it's okay, but the real power in this detachment is how powerful the stratagems are. Now, Guardian Battlehost has one premium stratagem, which I think is one of the best stratagems in the book, which is called Cost of Victory. It's where you pick up a unit and then you basically replenish any Guardians that have been lost from the unit. They go into strat reserves and they come down. This is done at the end of the opponent's turn. This is such a good stratagem, because this entire detachment is built around a unit combination that I think is actually very, very strong and hasn't been utilized as much as I kind of expected it to be. Once people caught on to the fact that Guardians with Farseer or Eldrad attached to it, and you add some Warlock Conclaves, and you add like a normal character Warlock, that unit actually does huge amounts of damage. It combines with a lot of synergy in the list. It allows you to have a multi-model unit with high OC that can play primary game, control areas of the board. The output is good against everything, and it's at high volume. So that means if you do use some synergies here, for example, in the Guardian Battlehost attachment, there's a 1 CP reroll all wounds if your opponent is on an objective, which can be absolutely wild with the amount of destructive shots that you can get out of a Guardian Battlehost unit. These units are actually really good in terms of maximum damage output. even if the efficiency of the output is kind of questionable because you need to incorporate a lot of synergy to really push it. Stuff like not Shroud, stuff like War Walkers for additional points of AP, Eldred for +1 to wound. This detachment also has some. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm getting the wording correctly. A really good stratagem where if you are tagged in combat, you have the ability to give the entire unit pistol, which is really nice. It means you don't have to fall back. There's no fall back and shoot in this detachment. You have every single stratagem is good here except for one of them. So the other good stratagems are you get an auto advance 6 on a unit of Storm Guardians that allows the unit of Storm Guardians, be it an attached unit or just a unit with nothing attached to it, able to get into position or do primary denial or really screen the opponent. We discussed that enhancement about having infiltrate. Imagine having a turn where you infiltrate and then you completely move, block, and jail your opponent. You can really slow them down with that. We've got warding salvos, which is the reroll wounds, and shield nodes, which is -1 to wound, which is not actually that relevant. Vol's Vengeance is not a good stratagem. Perfect. Yeah, I think this is a really good detachment. And the thing I love about this detachment, which works very nicely, is actually you don't need fire dragons to make your detachment work against anti-tank. Yeah, I think this detachment uses D cannons better than anyone else. It uses war walkers brilliantly as well with their +1 to hit. D cannons are really good in this meta, guys. So if you want to build a list around, let's say, 2 or 3 D cannons, 3 units of guardians, and then just fill in the blanks with stuff you like. If you want to have Jane's and some Howling Banshees, fine. If you want to have multiple units of Warp Spiders, that'll help you do your mission play, get a bit more speed into the list. I think these are really good. Now, the reason I put Guardian Battle Host in A tier rather than S tier is that I think Guardian Battle Host cannot play an aggressive playstyle. You are forced into a progressive, passive play style where you're picking away at things, putting the pressure on the opponent, hoping that they run at you, hoping you've gone second in the game, ideally, if you can, and hoping you can win on points here. Guardian Battles really struggles to get behind the opponent here. So A tier, I think it has one of the best set of rules, best stratagems. The output profiles are excellent across the entirety of the meta. But you have to still be careful. Your big bricks of Guardians are really expensive, and you can't just lose them willy-nilly, because as soon as you start really losing 1 or 2 bricks, you'll notice your army feels like it has nothing left. So you're forced into playing a very cagey kind of playstyle. Guardian Battle Host, in my opinion, they are A tier. Excellent, excellent army, and I think people are going to win events with these and continue to win events with these. And the discussion and the optimization of this particular detachment, I think, is something that will grow over time. Now let's move on to the next one, which is Aspect Host. Now, this is a personal favorite of mine. When the codex first dropped, I was super hyped for Aspect Host. Aspect Host is our most, I would say, this is one of our most vanilla kind of detachments. It is just straightforward in terms of what it's trying to do here. There are 2 main things that this detachment gives you. One is that it jacks up the output of your Aspect Warriors significantly. We have reroll 1s to hit or wound for the entire army, entire Aspect Warrior roster. And then we also have a 1 CP stratagem to give ignore cover, lethal hits, or sustained hits at any range in the shooting phase. And you can get 2 of those abilities. That is a very powerful buff relative to the other things that we can get inside of this codex. It's probably one of the premium stratagems in terms of increasing output. It allows you to kind of utilize all of the aspects in a very good and effective way. And the big unit that it activates, I think, better than pretty much any other detachment is the Dark Reapers. Dark Reapers are a little bit hit and miss for their increased point cost. For their points cost at the moment. And Aspect Host is the one where having reroll 1s to and just tips them over the edge into being very good. And the damage profile of Dark Reapers is excellent across the meta. If you imagine a unit of 10 Dark Reapers coming out of strat reserves, actually really spicy, just throwing lethal hits onto them, which is something we were doing in Yari. You throw lethal hits on, you use a couple of tokens just to flip a couple of misses into lethal hits, and all of a sudden you are really consistently able to kill vehicles. The other big thing is, because you do have access to Skyborn Sanctuary like Warhost, which is where you get back into a transport if you're wholly within 6 inches of it. It does mean you can reuse big bricks. So I think this detachment works really nicely with Fuegan and the 10 fire dragons, which I think is a very important unit for this meta, which is extremely kind of toughness skewed, heavy vehicles everywhere kind of thing. Having that unit active is actually really, really nice in this meta in a way it wasn't so relevant when the codex first dropped. This army, though, doesn't have very much in the way of fancy tricks. Guardian Battle Host, you replenish your units, you get all these reroll wounds stuff, and yeah, it's a really cool, funky detachment that people are not used to playing against. Aspect Host, when you play against it, it feels like this is normal Eldar. The only shenanigans they have really are their own kind of army rule, the battle focus rule, rather than anything else. So I think this army is our best army for playing a very aggressive playstyle, personally. I think it's very close between Aspect Host and Warhost. I think Aspect Host really shouldn't be playing a passive playstyle. It's not well set up for that. The only relevant playstyle is looking for the aggressive, I'm going to smash my opponent's face in kind of playstyle. The main aim now, I think, for Eldar players is to try and look for a moment where you can kill so much of the opponent's army it doesn't matter. You can score your challenger cards. I don't care. You got nothing left to hold any objectives. You got nothing left to score any points, and you're just going to fall behind by the end of the game. And Eldar is a little bit of a when they start winning, they start to spiral the game towards them a little bit, because if you're able to kill a chunk of the opponent's army and they can't really attack you, you hit another area of the board anywhere you like from that position really easily, and it starts to spiral out of control for the opponent. So Aspect Host, I think, absolutely brilliant for that playstyle. I personally think we're going to see a lot of Aspect Host at WTC do very well. Terrain formats that allow you to use the Swooping Hawks very well are really strong for Aspect Host, because the Swooping Hawks are actually didn't take any points changes. They're a really solid unit into the entirety of the meta, and they play a forward game, so they extend themselves forward of your deployment zone very effectively, which immediately puts you out of playing a passive playstyle, which is what we're looking for in this particular theory craft. So let's put Aspect Host into S tier. I actually, in my head, I have them above Warhost. I think they're going to be the best detachment for actually winning competitive games. But I think it's very close between Warhost and Aspect Host. And there are going to be some terrain formats, the terrain formats where you can't really use, let's say, Swooping Hawks very well. I think GW terrain is a little bit like that. I have a feeling Warhost might work a little bit better on GW terrain than Aspect Host. So just keep that one in mind. Okay, next one. So this is our other, I think, super competitive detachment. This detachment did take a little nerf that you can't now use the Baharoth and 10 Swooping Hawks. You can't drop them down and then immediately jump them back up into the sky and redeploy them. Now, let me get names of stratagems, because I like to use names if possible. Okay, yeah, so that one was called Unshroud of Truth. Cool. So Seia Council, they have a very, very good detachment rule, which is essentially they get a bunch of free command points. So they roll 6 dice, and then you have stratagems allocated to the different dice, and you can use those stratagems for free through the game. That is so good. This detachment feels like it has unlimited command points. The command point economy is so good. The value of that has reduced a little bit with challenger cards. There's a lot of times in the early game where you maybe don't really care about recycling cards, because you don't want to push too much of a point score ahead early in the game, because your opponent may start to draw challenger cards from round 2 onwards, which starts to get real sketchy when you count up the score. Challenger cards have a big influence on the game at the moment. In terms of enhancements, there's only one good one, which is the torque, which got an FAQ, so now it actually works how you want it to work, and it's a decent one-use kind of vector. And then we have a bunch of really, really strong stratagems. So the first stratagem is you pick an enemy unit and they take a battle shock test. Really good. We're already off to a good one, and this is one of the less good stratagems in here. They have to take it at -1. Really, really handy. Then we've got Forewarned, which is an infantry unit gets -1 to be hit and wounded in the fight phase. Really, really good. Just remember, we have unlimited CP, so all of these are just happening everywhere. Unshrouded Truth is the best stratagem, in my opinion. I think it's in my opinion, I think it's the best stratagem in the entire book. This one has no restriction on you being in engagement range. You can pick an infantry unit, you can pick it up and then put it down, and it all happens in the same movement phase. That is so strong. That is unbelievably strong. That's a fallback shoot and a complete redeploy. That is a phenomenal stratagem. We then have our increase in output. So this is the other detachment that uses the Guardian bricks really, really nicely. We need psychers in the army, so building around some of those Guardian bricks with Warlock Conclaves, Eldrad, Farseer, really, really nice. And this stratagem is our increase in output. It adds ignore cover, and then anytime you make a critical wound, you get an additional point of AP. The ignore cover is big. It's essentially a +1 AP to a lot of the weaponry in the Guardian. In the Guardian bricks, the destructors really benefit from having +1 AP. Yeah. Next one, it's also quite nice on Swooping Hawks, by the way. The 10 Swooping Hawks, they're still good. You don't need Baharoth for it. I think it's still decent in this detachment. Something that I think isn't being explored enough because that stratagem activates Swooping Hawks very, very nicely. Isha's Fury is phenomenal. Isha's Fury is that it's kind of a reactive grenades on a 3+ when an opponent's unit moves within 9 inches of you. Roll 6 dice, and any 3+ they take a mortal wound. Really good in the mirror, and just generally something that you're going to be popping off any chance you get to. And the final one is Psychic Shield, which is an 18-inch load up. They have such good stratagems. This detachment, I think, is the most balanced one. This is the one where the most number of things will work effectively inside of the detachment. Now, it's worth noting, I think, because this detachment has no ability to fire and fade, jump back into transport, anything like that, it makes a lot of your pieces one use when they activate. Which means that you can't play an aggressive playstyle, in my opinion. And there's going to be a lot of Seia Council players going to say, "What do you mean, Vic? I'm always like jumping in, killing my opponent, all of this stuff." I don't think you can do that if you have equal player skill to your opponent. I think when you're winning the game, you can go for that, but you can be aggressive in with any detachment, any army, if you're like really winning the game just on player skill. Um, I think Seia Council, if you're playing against someone of equal player skill who's watching everything you're doing and making your decisions to be aggressive, bad decisions where you will lose too much, then I don't think you're going to be able to do a very aggressive play style at the higher end of competitive play. I think you'll have to be much more passive and progressive with your play, and you absolutely have the tools to play a very intelligent, slow, passive game with this detachment, looking for your opportunities, picking away at the edges, grabbing points from your opponent, and gaining points for yourself when you can. This is the best detachment for using your brain power and utilizing every tool that the Eldar Codex has to offer. In my opinion, this is the most fun detachment to play. I think it's the one which most characterizes the way that Eldar players want to be playing the game. I'm going to put it in an A tier on competitive power, but I'm going to put it as an S tier in my head in terms of how much I love the detachment. I think anyone who's been playing Seia Council knows just how cool this detachment is, and it is actually phenomenally strong as well. So A tier for the Seia Council. Let's move on to the next one. So we've got Windrider Host. So in my opinion, Windrider Host is the highest output detachment that we have. They have multiple stratagems to increase the output on mounted units. And for mounted units, we're really thinking about Wind Riders here more than anything else. They have ability to give full rerolls to wound, gain an additional point of AP. They can deep strike within 6 inches, and they can pick up multiple Wind Rider units. Wind Riders are already phenomenally efficient in terms of their output because they have built-in rerolls to hit. They don't really have any, they have no enhancements that are relevant, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they don't. And stratagems, 4+. Oh, yes, they have one other good stratagem. It's called Overflight. So after you shoot, you have a little fire and fade. Now, the problem comes here is that when you actually play Windrider Host, you look at all units, you're like, oh yeah, I'm actually going to crush someone. But two things happen with Windrider Host. One is that your CP requirements to get the most out of your units are quite high. So what ends up happening is it's much more comfortable to play with one bike unit going, trying to kill a space. And then what I found is when I was trying out Windrider Host is that the output, while really high from this one unit, you kind of need a backup unit to help finish off whatever targets and things you were kind of trying to deal with. And then what happens from there is that the points cost of all the stuff that you're doing is really bad compared to the fragility of it. The Windriders just literally melt when they're looked at. And if your army has a lot of them, what can happen at some point in the mid game is that a lot of your Windriders kind of die. So, in order for you to win the game, I think for this detachment to be in the S tier, we really need like a 7-turn game, an 8-turn game. I think Windrider Host will be phenomenal. In fact, Eldar as general would be very, very good if we could play a very long game. But we don't. We're playing a 5-turn game, and your ability to attack across 4 turns, so turns 2 to 5, is a little awkward. So, in my opinion, I think it's going to be very hard to consistently win with Windrider Host, but they're technically a detachment with very strong rules. So I can't put them any lower than B tier. I think people are going to continue to try them, innovate with them. The lists look really scary when they're written down. I wouldn't even be surprised if some teams brought this to WTC and tried to make use of it, because it's pretty decent into high toughness things. The strength 6 breakpoint on shuriken cannons got better now that knights have gone down to toughness 11. And the scatter lasers are better against the little knights now that they've gone down to toughness 9. So Windrider Host does have the correct tools for that, but I'm just thinking, are you really going to take them over the other 4 detachments we have here that we've talked about already, especially for singles? I'm not really convinced, but maybe for teams, they might see some play. So Windrider Host is going to go into our B tier. Great detachment. And, if you're a Windrider Host player, I don't think you're going to be unhappy in this meta. I think they are going to be fine. Next one is Ynnari. So Ynnari, you know what? Everyone has stopped talking about Ynnari, but I actually think Ynnari, there's still room for a lot of innovation and list design at the moment. Ynnari still has some strengths. Now, the enhancements are really bad. The detachment rule, there's 3 detachment rules here still. Lethal intent got significantly nerfed, so that now, you have to be within 6 inches of something that died, and you can make a d6 plus 1 move afterwards, which is still, actually, you can set up for that. It's kind of clever. But it doesn't have the insane flexibility, both offensively and defensively, that lethal intent used to have. So it's more of kind of like a handy little trick, one more movement trick for us to work with, rather than a game-defining movement trick that it was before. We still have phenomenal stratagems. You have access to reroll ones to hit, sticky objectives. You have the ability to get lethal hits and ignore cover on a stratagem, which is you have all the correct stratagems for increasing output here. You still have your flat -1 to wound stratagem. And your sticky objectives on death is still really good for primary play. My favorite timing on sticky objectives is actually sticky objectives on death rather than sticky objectives in the command phase, because it gives you way more flexibility, and doing it in your opponent's turn means you score your primary through to your own turn. Everything is correct here. Now, the problem that Ynnari have here is that everything they have is one use. So you are playing not a completely honest game of Warhammer, but you're playing a very mid-level kind of game of Warhammer where you're trying to trade with your opponent and kill them that way. The stuff that Ynnari offers you isn't the fastest things in the game. It's not like Warhost and Aspect Host where you're jumping in behind with Lycus, you're using Fuegan. You've lost access to all of the Phoenix Lords here. The army is not as fast. But what you've gained is access to Drakari units. And there's one particular combination that I still really like, which is Venoms and Kabalite Warriors. I think you can build an army around that particular combination. It gives you a lot of cheap OC2 units that also jump in and out of Venoms. Venoms are really nice and fast. And it allows you to play it gives you a handy tool to use in passive games. I do think the Phoenix Lord based builds are a little bit better now. It would be handy to have access to Jane Zar in here. It'd be handy to have access to Fuegan. Wind Riders are still phenomenal in this detachment. Dark Reapers are still phenomenal in this detachment to make use of lethal hits and ignore cover. So uh, I wouldn't count the Ynnari detachment out just yet. I just think they're a little bit weaker than some of the choices we have in the A and the S tier. But I think you can still make Ynnari work, and they should still be viable competitively. All right, so we've got our B tier. We've got 2 in B tier, 2 in A tier, 2 in S tier. It's looking nice and symmetrical at the moment. We've got 3 more detachments to look at. And the next one is the Harlequins. Now, Harlequins, there are a lot of fans of Harlequins. Lots of people who don't like Eldar love Harlequins. Lots of people who like Eldar, of course, love Harlequins as well. Now, Harlequins are a little bit different in the codex. Harlequins are more based around taking a portion of your army as Harlequins. In the Ghost of Webway detachment, you gain OC2 on the troops, and so you can build your army around it, but you still have full access to all of the other Aeldari units, you know? So you can kind of really mix and match your army and try and get the strengths of both sides of things here. Um, they have a good set of stratagems. They have one phenomenal enhancement, which is the Coil of Segarak, I think it's called, where you do a bunch of mortal wounds when you charge in. So you can get a melee output unit that actually does a lot of damage here. Actually, not significantly more than Harlequins would do in another detachment. They have no stratagem to buff their output, as far as I can see. But they do gain some very good stratagems. The two main ones that I saw that I really, really like are Stage Death, which is a character can basically get back up again. I love that on a solitaire. I think that's really, really nice. And then you have a flat 6-inch reactive move when someone moves close to a unit of troops, which is wild because that goes on top of our other battle focus token moves. So you could very feasibly in one turn kind of go. Opponent falls back, you reactive move. Something ends with a 9. You stay your other 6-inch reactive move. Someone shoots you, you do another reactive move. It's a lot of reactive moves, and you can jump back into your transports. Your Star Weavers have built-in jumping back into their transports. There's This detachment has one of the best abilities to kind of reuse your units and keep them safe. But the detachment rule is a nothing detachment rule. You get OC2 on the troops, and you can move through other models, which is kind of like whatever. And the army is just a little fragile and expensive. That what you'll find is that when your opponent actually engages into you, they kind of kill a chunk of stuff, and the points total that they're killing just racks up really, really fast. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, I had an army once, I don't have an army anymore. This detachment looks really good on paper. On the board, it's not as good as it looks. It's still damn cool though. So if people are making Ghosts of the Webway work, which some people are, Liam Viesel had really good success with Harlequins at some team events. I think this one is also viable, just like the other stuff that we have in B tier. I think Windrider Host, Yari, Harlequins, you can make those work if you really want to dedicate yourself to them. If you want more consistent results, you're really looking at the S and the A tier armies in competitive play. Now, let's move on to our first C tier detachment. So this is Spirit Conclave. This one is a weird one because it's a bit of a shame. This detachment has a good set of rules on paper. So the actual rules of the detachment are pretty neat. Gaining battle focus on Wraiths is really good. I kind of wish your Wraith units gain battle focus in every detachment if they were near a Psyker. That actually would open up play with Wraiths a lot, because them not having battle focus as a rule actually sucks a little bit. It makes them just weaker. Um, but that's the detachment rule for this detachment. You gain battle focus, which is really handy. Battle focus is a very important rule for allowing these kind of Wraiths to move around both Wraith Lords and Wraith Guard. They have a good set of defensive stratagems. So you have command phase sticky, and you have a flat -1 damage. The other highlight stratagem that I saw is that you can get devastating wounds on some Wraith Blades. The entire detachment is focused around your kind of Wraith Guard bricks. And their bricks as in 5-man bricks. You now can't have 10-man brick. The detachment is okay. The rules look okay. The data sheets are not good. So Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades are not the best thing in the world. Unfortunately, even with Wraith Cannons actually being a decent profile into this meta, what you'll probably find is that the cost of the Wraith units, even though they look like they're moderately tough on paper, you have access to -1 damage, which is handy, they actually just kind of melt to stuff. And you get stuck behind walls with your tough stuff, and you're like, okay, I could go out, kill something, but my stuff's so expensive. Do I really want to do that? You have no way of kind of removing and stuff, except for just the one battle focus. I think this detachment really struggles to win games, but it has a very good identity. So if you do want to play loads and loads of Wraiths, you have an option to do it in here. But what I would say is,
that if you do want to play a token unit of Wraiths in one of the other detachments, I think you could do that quite well. I think the Wraith Cannon, Wraith Guard are okay, and you could play them out of a Wave Serpent or just running up the board and tanking certain areas of the board. They are going to be better in Spirit Conclave, but really an army with loads of units of Wraith Guard and Wraith Blades, that's not an army that's actually going to get you a lot of success consistently. So they're going to pop into C tier for me. Good effort from the Spirit Conclave, but I just think we are spoiled for choice with our other choices. And relative to the Spirit Conclave, the other choices are way better, even the B tier armies. And then this is our last detachment. So we've got Armored Warhost. I don't know what happened with this detachment. This one came out as one of the Grotmus detachments, and it buffs our vehicles. Every single rule helps our vehicles. Awesome. You can get your vehicles -2 charge, 6-inch deep strike. Fantastic. They've got assault now on all of their guns. So your fire prisms can whiz a little bit further. But isn't it awkward that Star Engines allows you to do a normal move at D6+1 and the detachment rule lets you advance and shoot? So really what it's pushing you to do is try and fight with multiple vehicles, which would be great if our vehicles were any good. Our vehicles are really bad across the board. Our best one is probably the Fire Prism. At 150 points, it's still not the best thing in the world, and it's still a bit of a niche pick competitively. But it is okay. Now, why would you take the Fire Prism in this detachment compared to any other? You really don't get much benefits from it, to be honest. Our vehicles are overcosted across the board, including our transports, and their output, because they don't have very many number of guns, they're not like a Predator with guns coming out of every port. We just have one big gun and one little gun. They really don't have high volume output. So the last thing you want to buff in the Eldar Codex is the vehicles, unless you're massively buffing them, which this detachment isn't even doing. This detachment is nerfing yourself compared to every other detachment in the book, and it is significantly worse than Spirit Conclave. Just to give you context, so this detachment is going into the F tier, giving us our final look at our detachment tier list for Fireside 40K by Vic VJ. This one, so if you want to put this up on the Eldar Reddit, the Warhammer competitive Reddit, and completely roast me because I'm mad. Seia Council is definitely S tier. I'm expecting that a lot. What's Guardian Battle Host doing about Windrider Host? I'm expecting all of these things. Just know that this is from my experience and context, because someone will always comment sensibly saying, you know why Vic said this? He explains it in the video, and I'm going to explain it now, which is I am looking at it purely from high-level competitive play. What detachment can you squeeze the most out of to consistently allow you to win games or win tournaments? And I put them all relative to each other. So that's not to say that A tier is just like S tier is just broken or anything. That's to say that I think the S tier detachments are a little bit better consistently at doing that than the A tier ones, and they're better than the B tier ones. The four detachments which are in our A and S tier are, in my opinion, are our premium detachments, and I think the power level of those are a little bit interchangeable. The playstyle is also a little bit different. We have two which encourage a more aggressive playstyle, which are Warhost and Aspect Host, and we have two which beautifully play a passive playstyle with technically on paper stronger rules, stronger stratagems, stronger detachment rule. That's the Guardian Battle Host and Seia Council, but they encourage you to play a more passive playstyle. You pick what playstyle you like, what flavor, what theme of army you like, and I think the strongest results that are going to come out of Eldar is someone who picks one of them and says, I'm going to master this. And I think you're going to get huge amounts of success if you continue to master and refine your player skill with whatever units you pick in your army, and you can make little tweaks from there. I think this army massively rewards that particular approach, and we're entering a period of time where we should have months, I think, where our army is going to be untouched and just playing around with whatever the meta throws us. So I think this is the perfect time to be an Aeldari player. I'm expecting to see a lot of people be interested in it. If you want to continue to chat with me, if you want to see the recording of the open coaching session where I did loads of Eldar questions, even put loads of stuff on TTS, looked at movement pathways for wave serpents, etc., make sure you do join the YouTube membership at the Discord level. If you want to see all the membership only videos, you can join at that level or even at the base level and you'll get those. But the Eldari Discord is really damn good. So See if you can get involved with that and join our amazingly constructive discussion. And anyone who's already there, thank you very much. And thank you all for listening and joining me today with 40K Fireside. And I'll see you all next time by the fireside. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the 40K Fireside. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, drop us a comment, check out the YouTube members area, and we look forward to seeing you again next time by the fireside.